Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to 3 Wide. This is the last 3 Wide race review of the season because the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series made their way to the finale at Homestead Miami Speedway for the Ford EcoBoost 400. If you just take out your feelings of who won, this race was pretty good and I love Homestead Miami Speedway. I love this track because it promotes passing properly, unlike some other tracks on the schedule. It has all these different lines that people can try to use and pass, and you don't feel like you've hit a brick wall. You can go to the top of the wall, you can go to the bottom of the track, you can try to run the middle if it's working. Unlike some other tracks on the schedule, such as Texas, where you're pretty much stuck running one groove and you can't bump someone out of the way at Texas because it's just going to cause a huge mess. So like Martinsville, yes, it's one groove for the most part at most races, but you can bump people out of the way and you're not going to send them into orbit unless you really try to. And this track at Homestead really isn't weather dependent. This race starts in the day and goes in the night, and the racing is pretty much the same. People are picking different lines and going all the way around. It's not like the Chicagoland race where the heat played a huge role into it. I wonder how a hot race at Homestead Miami Speedway in the middle of the day in Florida would react to these cars. So with all that being said, we'll get into my 3 takeaways from the Ford EcoBoost 400. Number 1, Larson slaps the wall. Going into this race at Homestead Miami Speedway, it was either you're picking the championship 4 or you were picking Kyle Larson to win this race. And Kyle Larson looked like the best chance for a non-championship 4 guy to win this race for the first time since NASCAR went to this format. But in typical Larson fashion at this track, he just came up a little short today and he smacked the wall on lap 194 in turn 4, and he had a tire go down. It was pretty much the end of the day for Larson. Larson will end his season winless and finish in the 13th position, leading 45 laps, and will probably be wondering for the next couple of years, I think, what could have been at Homestead Miami Speedway, because I feel like with the new package coming in, Homestead's going to be a completely different animal next season. Now on to number 2, a race of lasts. Going into Homestead Miami Speedway every year, with it being the season finale for the NASCAR Cup Series, it's usually a race of lasts, but this year it's just a crazy amount of lasts. We've had longtime sponsors and crew chiefs going separate ways from drivers. We have drivers who had somewhat of a bright future looking for new rides, and we had guys go from semi-underfunded teams to potentially a new good team in the Cup Series. In total, I counted at least 9 lasts that we got in this race that are a pretty big deal for the Cup Series. To start things off with Jimmie Johnson, as we all know, this was his last race with Lowe's on the hood and Chad Knaus on the pit box. Jimmie Johnson had a little glimmer of hope in the last stage when he was staying out for pit strategy and was running in the 3rd position, but things wouldn't go to plan for them when a caution would come out and Jimmie Johnson would end up finishing in the 14th position in his last run in the Lowe's number 48 Chevrolet, with Chad Knaus making the calls for him. Move on to next year in the 48 with Ally Financial on the car, more than likely being a purple car, and Kevin Meendering coming over from Elliott Sadler's number 1 car in the Xfinity Series to crew chief the 48 machine. Next up is AJ Allmendinger. AJ Allmendinger was making his last start in the Cup Series, at least for now, in the number 47 for JTG Doherty Racing. AJ Allmendinger would finish in the 19th position and pretty much be a non-factor all day. Allmendinger will more than likely, I believe, not be in the Cup Series next year, and I think he'll be driving sports cars for Michael Shank Racing in IMSA, as he ran for them a couple years ago in the Rolex 24 at Daytona and did a really good job. And as we all know from NASCAR, AJ Allmendinger is a really good road course racer, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years, or maybe even next year if he somehow funds this fully, that AJ Allmendinger could potentially get a ride in the Indianapolis 500. As the one year he ran it for Roger Penske, he was running really well and then had his seatbelts come undone and he had to pit, which caused him a chance of winning the Indianapolis 500. Up next is the future Hall of Famer Matt Kenseth. Matt Kenseth came back this year to run part-time for Roush Fenway Racing in the number 6 car, sharing time with Trevor Bayne. Matt Kenseth, I think, gave the 6th ride their best runs all season. He even did it here at Homestead, where he would finish in the 6th position and was running 2nd at one point, looking that he can maybe steal one here at Homestead. I feel like Kenseth won't be back in the Cup Series, and this was his swan song, and I feel like this was a better way to go out than he did with the 20 car, where he finished 8th last year in that 20 car, and this year he finishes 6th in the less than powerful Ford of Roush, the place where he started in the Cup Series. Hearing that Kenseth really doesn't want to run full-time next year, if I was Roush, I'd see if he'd want to run some Xfinity races, maybe in that 60 car if it's back, because as we saw this year from that 60 car, it can use a couple races where it doesn't end up with broken parts. Our 4th driver is Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez was rushed into the Cup Series with the retirement of Carl Edwards seemingly coming out of nowhere. Suarez would do semi-okay in the number 19 Aris Toyota in his 2 years in the Cup Series. Suarez would end up finishing here in the 30th position, where he brought out a caution that would change the momentum of this race. It's rumored that Suarez is going to the 41 of Stewart-Haas Racing, and if Stewart-Haas Racing can give Suarez the same cars that they gave Kurt Busch this year, I feel like Suarez can realize his full potential in the number 41 Ford for Stewart-Haas Racing next season. Our 5th driver is Matt DiBenedetto. Matt DiBenedetto's been driving the number 32 Ford for Go Fast Racing this season, and has been one of the backmarker cars that shows potential, where he gets the most out of the car that he can get, and he's going to be I think, rewarded next season where he moves over to the number 95 of Levine Family Racing, which is going to get full Toyota backing from Joe Gibbs Racing, and I think be a minor Furniture Row Racing here, and I think DiBenedetto could be a dark horse to do pretty well in the playoffs next year, maybe even sneaking into the round of 8. Now, I don't know how long DiBenedetto signed his contract for Levine Family Racing, but I feel like this team could be a potential candidate for Christopher Bell if DiBenedetto doesn't produce next season, to where Bell would move over to that car and Joe Gibbs can maybe hold on to Denny Hamlin for just a little bit longer without having to kick him to the curb, even though this season was pretty abysmal for Denny Hamlin with his standards from the past couple of years. I feel like the goal for DiBenedetto next year will be to just make the playoffs. It's 16 of the best drivers or 16 of the luckiest drivers depending on how you look on it. I feel like DiBenedetto could sneak through and be one of the 16 drivers in the playoffs next season. Next up is Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch ran this season in the number 41 for Stewart-Haas Racing and is rumored to be going to Chip Ganassi Racing to go in the 1 car and take over for Jamie McMurray. This season was a really good season for Kurt Busch. He ran well all season and almost made the championship 4. Who knows if he doesn't get caught up in that wreck at Phoenix, that he's not one of the guys at Homestead fighting for the championship crown. Now, I don't know how Kurt Busch will be doing in the number 1 next year or whatever number that car turns out to be. All I know is Chip Ganassi Racing doesn't seem like they're on the uptick, and who knows how Chevy's going to be next season. I would believe that Chevy will be a lot better next year, considering they'll have another year under their belt with this Camaro body, but then with the new packages, I don't know who's going to be good and who's going to be bad, because I feel like the package just throws a huge curveball into this for everyone. And as we saw from Jamie McMurray this season, that 1 car really isn't good, and we all believe Kyle Larson's a great driving talent and he gets the very best out of the 42 car, that if they put someone who's kind of mediocre in that 42 car, they'd be running in the 30s. And our 7th driver who was on his way out of the team he was driving for was Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman is signed on to drive the 6 car for Roush Fenway full-time next season, and we'll hope to turn that team around to make them what they were back in the day, or at least semi-competitive. Newman finished up his season in the number 31, finishing 15th. This was a pretty abysmal year for Ryan Newman, where he came semi-close to making the playoffs, but never felt like a real threat to really get in. So he'll move on to Roush Fenway next year and hope to semi-resurrect his career and be in the playoffs. Our 8th driver is Jamie McMurray. Jamie McMurray wrapped up his full-time driving career allegedly here at Homestead, finishing in the 18th position in his number 1 McDonald's Chevy for Chip Ganassi Racing. The rumor is that Jamie McMurray has gotten an offer from Chip Ganassi to run the Daytona 500 for his team and then go off into the sunset after the Daytona 500 and work somewhere in the Chip Ganassi Racing team. I feel like McMurray will take this offer to run the Daytona 500 and then go work for Chip Ganassi. This year for McMurray was a pretty down year, a year where I thought he could make the playoffs heading into it. He really never had a chance, I thought. And we're running one last race for Chip Ganassi at a plate track, and the final plate race, at least for now, I feel like is the best offer that McMurray will have to maybe get into victory lane. And lastly, our 9th driver is Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. went into this race knowing that Furniture Row Racing was closing and that he'll be moving on to race for Joe Gibbs Racing next year, taking over for Daniel Suarez. Truex would have one hell of a race where he looked like he was going to walk out with back-to-back championships and sending Furniture Row off into the sunset in a great way. But as we all know from my video last week, Homestead is where dreams go to die. Truex would come up just short, finishing in the 2nd position, and was just mere inches away from maybe doing something to maybe get to the guy that beat him to getting the championship. But he was just passed too quick and couldn't do anything and was just sitting in 2nd, probably wondering what he could have done completely different to maybe walk out with the 78 as the back-to-back champions who won't be there next season to defend their crown. Now, my feelings on the 78 closing is the reason why I think everyone kind of has a semi-problem with NASCAR these days. It's ridiculous that the guy who won the championship last year can't get a sponsor and the team is shutting down and won't be back. It's especially annoying because Furniture Row is a very competitive team, and it seems like the reason that they're closing is because Joe Gibbs tripled the fee he was charging the 78 team. I don't know if this was Joe Gibbs just figuring out this expenses going up, or Joe Gibbs getting annoyed that he was getting smacked around by someone in their own equipment. This is just one of the things I currently don't like in NASCAR, where it's not really about your talent level or how you produce on the track for the most part. It's about who you know and who can fork over money to get the race car to the track. It annoys me that guys like Matt Tifft are going to come up to the Cup Series next year. He's going to be allegedly driving for Front Row Motorsports in a 3rd car. How does a sponsor want to fund Matt Tifft over the defending champion and a guy who finished 2nd in the Cup Series title run. Yes, I know it's cheaper to probably fund the 36 car that it's going to be for Front Row Motorsports instead of being on a competitive number 78 car that's essentially a 5th Joe Gibbs car. But I just find it ridiculous that guys can just come in and kind of be semi-okay in the lower series, but guys who are producing at a high level and turning their careers around to where if Truex keeps this up for 3+ more years, no one's going to remember the beginning or how his Michael Waltrip days ended. They're going to remember from the 78 till the end, where he was one of the greats in his current car and is going to be looked at as one of the great turnarounds in NASCAR history. Now on to number 3. Joey Logano wins the race, and that means he's our champion. Before the cars hit the track at Homestead this week, I pretty much think everyone had the number 22 Pennzoil Ford finishing in the 4th position out of all the playoff guys who were left. But then they hit the track come Friday and Saturday, and Joey Logano looked like one of the best cars. It looked like to me between him and Martin Truex Jr. of who will be determining who the champion is. And that's exactly how it played out on Sunday night, where it came down to a short one, which Logano was great on all day, and Truex was semi-okay. Truex would get out to a little bit of a lead, but then Logano would come roaring down on Truex and would pass him. And Truex said he passed him so quick that he couldn't even do anything about it, and Joey Logano would set sail to win his first NASCAR Cup Series crown. Now Logano, in terms of consistent points, was the 4th best guy all season. So this just shows in the NASCAR playoff system that you just gotta beat the 3 other guys in one race and be the better guy on one day to win the championship. And that being consistent for most of the season really doesn't matter that much, but for this 4 playoff guys, these were the 4 best that we had in terms of a consistent old system that some of us want to go back to. And Logano winning this championship the way he did shouldn't be a reason that you don't like him. That, oh, he just lucked into a championship because he won the one race and he was really the 4th best guy. He did what was put in front of him. If you don't want to like Logano, like him for the other stuff he's done in the past, like going after Mark Martin at Pocono back in the day, essentially wrecking him for the win, getting in his tussles where he broke Denny Hamlin's back, dumping him into the wall at Auto Club, or if you didn't like what he did to Martin Truex Jr. at Martinsville, be mad at him for that. Don't say he won this championship on pure luck, because essentially that's what this championship is nowadays. You just have to beat 3 other guys on one lap at one race of the season, the last lap, to be the champion, and he just happened to be at the right place at the right time to win the championship this season. Now I don't feel like NASCAR needs to change the point system. We just need to keep with a point system for multiple years and not throw any more wrenches in, like if someone's leading at halfway they get an extra 6 points and 2.5 playoff points to carry along. You just need to stay with this current playoff system, because if we stay with what we have, eventually it will come to the 4 best drivers every single year there, and we won't be like, oh, like this year Austin Dillon made it because he got lucky. This won't happen anymore. Everyone will kind of have a formula to what to do, and the 4 best guys will be there at the end, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day in the NASCAR playoffs. So now, putting 2018 behind us, and Joey Logano is the 2018 champion, we'll put that in the rearview mirror, and we'll look ahead to our very early 2019 preview with my 3 things to look ahead to for next season. Number 1, the new rules package. Next year in the Cup Series, they'll have a new aero package to where they'll be running these huge spoilers that look like mini green monsters from Fenway on the back of these cars, and splitters that stick out even further, so if you go through the grass, your car's going to be all jacked up after you go through that. And they'll have a tapered spacer at a majority of the tracks, including what we usually are calling the restrictor plate tracks next season, except for the Daytona 500. So Talladega, both races, and the Coke Zero 400 will be the first of the tapered spacer era at these 2.5-mile ovals that we usually are calling restrictor plate tracks. And there will also be ducts added to the car. They'll have aero ducts at some tracks and brake ducts at other tracks. My full thoughts on the 2019 rules packages: this is kind of going to be the only thing I can equate this to is the skydiver today from Homestead. It could be cool in the beginning and it's like, wow, that's really cool, this is great, this is all going well, and maybe it can be that and everything will be a safe landing and everything will be fine. Or this can start out cool at the beginning and then as we go along at some tracks it gets stuck in the fence and we're just hanging there going, oh, we gotta change this somehow because this is not gonna work. I feel some tracks is gonna work, but my ultimate fear is that it turns into these 2 races that we saw this season in the Xfinity Series. The Pocono Xfinity race was just garbage. I was there and I will never get that time back in my life. I was just watching Kyle Busch lead for a million laps, it felt like, and no one could really pass. They had a semi-good run in stage 2 where I think Paul Menard won the stage. Other than that, this package didn't really work at the Tricky Triangle. And the other race was the Michigan Xfinity race. That race, they were closely tight packed, but it was really looked like a pain in the ass to pass. Seems like you need a miracle shot to get by, and I don't want that to be at the tracks that we're going to in the Cup Series, to where you're going to need about 7 cars to give you a shot at the exact time to pass just one guy, and we're just in this tight little line like we're running the top at Talladega for 300 laps and we can't get by. I hope this package produces good good racing, but I know if it doesn't, that we're going to really look forward to the short tracks because they're really not running the spacer or anything there. It's essentially just a little bit of a bigger spoiler and everything, and splitter at these tracks to where aero really won't play a huge role at Martinsville's and Bristol's. Hopefully at Bristol. I don't know how it's going to really react at Bristol, because the two Bristol races I think could be the two best races of the year that we saw all season in the Cup Series, and I hope this new package won't mess any of that up, and hopefully the road courses will be as good as we all hope they'll be. So now on to number 2, the rookie duo. This year in the Cup Series we had a rookie duo of William Byron and Darrell Wallace Jr. who had semi-okay rookie seasons for the cars that they were in. William Byron ended up being the rookie of the year. Next season we'll have 2 new rookies coming in as of right now who will be our new rookie duo of Ryan Preece, who will be in the number 47 car taking over for AJ Allmendinger, and Daniel Hemrick, who will take over for Ryan Newman either in the 31 or the 8 car. Now I don't think these guys will have crazy good rookie seasons. I could see Hemrick being pretty good at the road courses because he did really well. He was looking like he'd be one of the guys to surprise some people at the Roval, and he's been one of the more consistent drivers in the Xfinity Series. If they had a consistent points title, he would have won that in the Xfinity Series. And Ryan Preece I expect to be really good at the short tracks. As we know, it doesn't take a huge team to run well at the short tracks, and I feel like JTG Daugherty Racing has run well at the short tracks with Chris Buescher and AJ Allmendinger right now. One of AJ Allmendinger's best tracks is Martinsville, and I feel like Preece can really show his modified background there and really run well at those tracks and really show what he's worth there. And just hopefully JTG will progress and progress and progress to where he can show his full potential in one of those cars. Now on to number 3. Can Joey Logano repeat? The short answer is no, because as we know in the Cup Series, that's a very esteemed list to win championships back to back. Going into next season, there's currently 10 drivers who have won the Cup Series crown back-to-back. Jimmy Johnson's won it 5 straight times, Cale Yarborough won it 3 straight times, Buck Baker, Lee Petty, Joe Weatherly, Richard Petty, Darrell Waltrip, David Pearson, Dale Earnhardt, and Jeff Gordon all have won it twice in a row. So if we're pulling a Larry Mack here and looking at the trends, it doesn't look like it's trending upward for Logano, considering the last person to do it was Jimmy Johnson. And I don't feel like next year's package is really going to play into like how anyone could be like, oh, we had a good car last year, we should be good next year. And especially with this new points format that it's never been done in, winning championships back to back, I feel like it's really hard, and I think Logano will definitely have an uphill climb to go back to back in 2019. So that'll do it for 3 Wide this season. Leave your thoughts about Homestead and what you think is going to happen in 2019 in the comment section below. And if you like this video, hit the like button, and if you like what I'm doing on this channel and want to see more videos, hit the subscribe button. And as always, thanks for watching.